Another night of wind and heavy rain means continued flooding concerns right around the region. On Vancouver Island, the city of Courtenay is under a local state of emergency. At least 200 millimeters of rain has fallen in Courtenay since the downpour began on Monday. The latest report suggests the Comox Lake Reservoir is up about 1.5 meters, with water flowing in at the rate of an Olympic-sized pool every 2.5 seconds. The deluge has shut down a number of local roads, and emergency management and BC Hydro are warning Courtenay's flooding right now could be worse than it was just a few years ago.
It was the combination of the extremely high tide midday yesterday with all the heavy rain. We'll have a similar situation unfolding today. The tide almost 16 feet, and it's right around mid-morning.
Delta is also under a local state of emergency this morning because of the weather conditions. For more on that, let's go to Andrea McPherson joining us live with more. Andrea.
Kyle, the wind and rain has started to pick up again this morning, and this home behind me remains under evacuation. This after a portion of the seawall collapsed under the strong winds and heavy waves around Boundary Bay yesterday. Crews have been working throughout the night. They've been trying to put up a temporary barrier. The temporary barrier consists of concrete blocks. There is a bit of uncertainty as far as how stable they are, though. In total, 21 meters of the seawall in this area actually collapsed in Tawasin.
We're watching it and everything seemed under control, and the next time I looked out, my husband had just left for work and no seawall next door. So Rob's seawall did have a crack in it, and I guess it was undermined and just fell into the ocean, and from there it was just a matter of minutes before his whole yard got eaten away.
He realized that if we didn't have this collapse, we wouldn't be here today. So it's isolated to this one property, to this one aged beach wall. And we're trying the best we can to see what we can do to protect the rest of the community from this.
The Corporation of Delta has put out a warning to people living in Boundary Bay Village as well as Beach Grove that there is the possibility of more localized flooding coming up today. High tide is expected around 9 o'clock, and that's when things could get even worse here in Delta. Kyle.
We'll keep an eye on the situation. Andrea McPherson live for us this morning in Delta. Andrea, thanks for that. Flooding is also a huge concern for people living on the North Shore, an area all too familiar with the problem. You can hear and see just how high and fast the Seymour River has been running. Work continues to make sure there's not a repeat of last month's damage to several homes. In Burnaby, things are looking awfully wet and soggy at Fraser Foreshore Park. The Fraser remains under a high stream flow advisory along with large portions of the south coast. Vancouver usually avoids the worst of it, but the city is not immune to flooding. City workers used the sand at Locarno Beach to fill up big sandbags. They will stay in place until at least mid-January, protecting the local roads and homes just meters away. Well, while you were sleeping overnight, gas prices have taken another tumble in the Lower Mainland. Have a look. You can now fill up your tank for $1.12.9 a litre at many stations across Metro Vancouver. Oil prices have hit a 5-year low, dropping down to levels not seen since 2010. In some parts of Western Canada, the price of gas has dropped to less than $1, but experts say we here will not be seeing that in Metro Vancouver, of course, because of our higher taxes. Honda Canada is recalling 700,000 vehicles because of airbag problems. The airbag inflator in a number of vehicles has been implicated in 5 deaths and dozens of injuries in the U.S. and abroad. But Honda says it's unaware of the problem causing any deaths or injuries in Canada. The airbags can inflate with too much force, blowing apart a canister and spewing pieces of metal. The recall covers certain Honda cars, SUVs, Odyssey minivans, and Ridgeline pickups, as well as certain Acuras. Mazda is also expanding its North American airbag recall. Both Mazda and Honda use Japanese supplier Takata, which is under fire for its airbag inflators that can explode, shooting out metal and plastic pieces. The recalls have so far concentrated on regions with high humidity. Well, there are lots of questions following a plane crash in Pitt Meadows yesterday afternoon, but one thing seems certain: the pilot is certainly lucky to be alive. The Cessna 152 went down on a taxiway near the runways at Pitt Meadows Airport. The pilot was able to pull himself from the aircraft and walk away from this damage. He was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The pilot was reportedly trying to make an emergency landing, but it's unclear what problems the aircraft was having. The Transportation Safety Board is investigating. RCMP are looking to speak with anyone who witnessed a fatal crash in Coquitlam on Monday night. A 53-year-old pedestrian was killed when a car lost control on Como Lake Avenue at Robinson Street at around 10 o'clock. Investigators say alcohol could have been a factor. BC sawmills are safer these days, at least when it comes to excess sawdust. That's one finding in a provincial report from WorkSafe BC. It also says measures are now in place to pursue criminal action against negligent operators. There was an outcry when no charges were laid after a pair of fatal explosions in Burns Lake and Prince George. BC's chief coroner is holding a joint inquest into the 2012 accidents. It's set to begin in March. Well, it's home sweet home for the Vancouver Canucks after a grueling road trip that started so promising but finished a little bit differently.
It's the puck ahead, and here's Yannick Hansen, who has one shorthanded goal this year. Hansen centers, they score! Derek Dorsett, his second shorthanded goal of the year.
Their penalty kill was definitely working, but that was about the only highlight for the Canucks. They only mustered 16 shots on goal, while the Canadians did a better job of capitalizing on theirs. Montreal broke a 1-1 tie with just over 4 minutes left in the game. The Habs added an empty netter for a 3-1 victory. Vancouver goes winless in the last 3 games of its road trip for a final record of 3-3-1. Regardless of the result, it was an emotional night in Montreal. Late Habs great Jean Beliveau was honored with a very special tribute, including a 2-minute standing ovation for his wife. She watched the game next to Jean's regular seat, which was decorated with his number 4 jersey. Beliveau passed away last week at the age of 83 with his name on the Stanley Cup more than anyone else. His funeral is going to be held today in Montreal, and Sportsnet will carry that for you live right after BT.